Hi, I'm Melissa Stevens, and you're joining me today on Fab15 for my new show called Heart of Wax. Hi, welcome back to the Fab15 with Melissa Stevens. That is me. So let's get started. This is Heart of Wax, and to me, that's even better than a heart of gold. I'm such a fan of the encaustic medium. Today we're going to carve out images and then fill them with the encaustic medium. From what I understand, this is a more exacting type of painting. So if you're looking to draw something that you want to be really specific and you don't want it to be like an abstract, blowing around your paint and mixing it that way, this is a great way to do it. The tools that we're going to be working with today are, we're going to be working with paints in these little cups. Normally I am working with large cans of paint, like about this size, but because the areas that we're going to be filling are smaller, we're going to go ahead and work with these small tins. So here it is in its molten form. The other thing that I have on my plate is soy wax. And soy wax is what you use to clean your brushes with. So it's kind of like when you paint with watercolor and you rinse your brush with water. You can use little tongue depressors to stir the paint in their little tins. You can see this one I've already used to stir a green color. And you can use both sides of them, or you can use, if you don't want to waste, you can stir colors in the same family without tainting too much. Because this is called Heart of Wax, and we're in the month of love, February, Valentine's Day and all of that, I'm going to go ahead and do hearts. There's already kind of a heart shape in this painting, and I'm going to show you what intarsia is on this. So if I was going to do intarsia, that means that I would just be carving out a line using any tool. This is just a small rounded head cutting tool. You might see a ceramicist use it. You don't have to carve down to your first layers, just a few layers will do. So I'm not going to carve the whole image, and I don't need to be super exacting, but I want to give you a nice example of what intarsia is. And when you're doing intarsia with the encaustic medium, it's not required that you just do thin little layers. You can go ahead and put on quite a bit of paint because it's all settling into those lines. And we're going to go ahead and use our straight razors to wipe the excess off of the painting. So there I've filled the line. I'm going to go ahead and do it your direction so you can see. And then I would wait for it to cool a bit and take my straight edge, which is rather dirty right now. I'm going to try and clean it off really quick. You can see the line has been filled and it is flush with the surface. There's no bump or anything like that. Then I would go in and I would gently fuse it. Getting rid of those scrape lines. And I find with intarsia what works best is to lightly fuse and move on down the road pretty quick, moving to a section that's cooler than the rest so that you don't end up with your line seeping all over the place. And you'll eventually get rid of those carved lines. I'm going to go ahead and fill the other space that I carved but didn't fill. Okay, I have just a few little air bubbles in there. Get rid of those. You can see the paint slightly shift. So in this case, I just did a really light fusing, got rid of most of those scraping lines, but then maintained this nice, straight, filled line. So the method we're going to use today, I'm not going to be using this thick carving tool. I'm going to go ahead and use just like this little needle nose point to carve my lines. And the reason is because I don't want the line to be the feature of the art. I want that filled, colored space to be the star of the show. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do some more hearts just because, like I said, it's Valentine's Day. I could create a whole picture instead of just these shapes that I'm looking to fill. But for the purpose of experimenting, that's what we're going to do. So I've got my hearts and I've got my lines. I'm working with smaller paint brushes today than I normally would. You can buy little teeny tiny chip brushes like this at any hardware store, Home Depot, Lowe's. You can buy them by the box load for super cheap if you buy them in bulk. You can also work with small, more kind of brush that you would use for watercolor and that sort of thing. Just make sure that your hairs are natural hair so that they don't melt in your paint. If you use synthetic brushes, they will melt. You just need to make sure that the brush is nice and warm before it goes into your paint. And then we can go ahead and use a different color. I kind of like this orange color. And then I think we'll just paint over the top of our blue. You notice I am not scratching out the color that's already there. I'm just going ahead and painting on that surface area. The carved line, I guess what it's doing is it's giving me a guide, and if I do tend to make the brush go over the top, it's not going beyond that line because it's catching on the carved portion that I drew into the paint. So true to encaustic paint behavior, it is cooling rather quickly on this teeny tiny brush. I'm going to go ahead and paint the entirety of its shape. And I could go to just fusing this very lightly and trying to maintain some of that texture that has been created by the brush, or I could smooth it out, I guess. Let's try and see what happens. So I'm just going to fuse this a little bit. And it appears to be maintaining its shape as long as I don't go overboard. I'm going to try and heat just a little bit more in the same place for a little longer and see what happens. Okay, even when I did that, it tended to stay within the lines, and I could very easily go in there with a straight blade and just clean up the little edges that got a little rambunctious and went outside the lines. Might want to do that when the paint cools off a little bit. So there, I carved that line, I filled it, and I fused it. So let's do some other painting here. Let's do some green on these lines with the chip brush. chip brush is almost too big for the shapes that I've carved, but I wanted to try it with a couple different brushes to see what happens when I go over the line. The pointy section is a little more challenging with this brush. So the lines I'm finding are a great guide and almost work as if I've drawn out a shape with a pencil on a piece of paper. So let's go ahead and try fusing these. Before we fuse though, I have seen some people go in and scrape a little bit before fusing to smooth it out a little bit before adding the heat. And maybe that is an easier way to obtain a smooth surface area when you fuse. See, I can tell there's a huge difference between what I painted on here and what I've got after just scraping it a little bit. It's much, much smoother. Let's do a little comparison here. Compare and contrast. This portion that has much more body to it than this portion, which is much flatter. So perhaps scraping first before fusing if you're looking for that smooth surface area that is an even playing field, almost like the intarsia, but not quite. Maybe scraping is the better way to go. You can also clean those areas up that went over the line before fusing. I'm going to leave the heart as is. I'm just going to clean a little bit around the edges here first. I'm curious to know what all that paint's going to do in there. The best view possible. Alright, so let's get our torch out. So I'm fusing that line that I scraped first. Just really lightly, and again, like the intarsia, I'm kind of lightly heating and then moving very quickly before it starts getting all runny. This one's a bit thicker. Now let's get to that heart. But you can see a little bit of a runoff there. Maybe the heat gun would be the better choice, but normally I can get similar effects with the torch. These are very small areas to be working for so long with the heat. Trying to get rid of that air bubble. There we go. Alright, so you can see, well I can see, you might not be able to tell on the video here, but there is a little bit of a bump here where my torch blew the paint in that direction. But overall, I think you can see that the paint settled into those lines really nicely and with very little cleanup after fusing and after filling those areas. There is a little bit of a raised area there. It's very, very small, but you are essentially adding a layer to your painting, so it's going to be raised. It's not going to be flat like the intarsia would be. So that concludes my sampling of coloring in hearts and coloring in shape. That you will join me again on the Fab15. Give me a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button. I hope that I will see you soon. Thanks for watching with me. Bye-bye.